Hello, this is Dave Rattigan, along with Dale Lawrence, and welcome to another episode of Inside the Line, Real Stories by Real Cops. Today's podcast, which talks basically about the life, let's say the way police officers see the world from the world of a suburban beat cop, from the perspective of a suburban beat cop. With me is Dale Lawrence, not his real name. Recently,
actually, Dave, I want to correct that. It is my real name because I legally just got it changed.
Did you?
I like Dale Lawrence. Dale Lawrence has a nice twist to it.
You got your name legally?
Well, Dale is a friend of mine from the Marine Corps. I got, that's a nice name you got, Dale. I haven't met many Dales in my life, and then I don't know where Lawrence came from, but not Lawrence, Massachusetts. I can assure you of that.
Not Lawrence, Massachusetts. I got a feeling, Dale, that what you did is you were probably like a lot of girls were in high school, where you had a little pad and you wrote down your married name, what your dream last name would be, and your dream first name, and you put them together, and probably spent hours up in your room with your stuffed animals. It took me about
20 minutes. I was in Lowell one day, and I'm saying, hey, I was sitting on the side of the road and waiting for someone, and it started bouncing around names, and it just came up with Dale Lawrence.
When you were in Lowell, you didn't come up with Dale Lowell?
I was waiting for Susie Yum Yum.
So this is Inside the Thin Blue, Inside the Line. We changed the name. Inside the Line, real stories by real cops. And we just want to start off by saying, if you like it, share it, tell your friends. We're trying to build up our listenership. And also, if you have any suggestions or questions or topic ideas, feel free to email them to us at insidethethinblueline@gmail.com. I assume we'll change that at some point, but it's insidethethinblueline@gmail.com. Next week, we've got an episode I'm really looking forward to, the police psych exams. We're going to come up with one, and we're going to give it to Dale and to our good friend, comedian Nathan Arroyo. And basically, I'm thinking, well, that's two people who are going to flunk that exam.
I've already passed it once, but I think I had some cheat notes with me, so I don't have the cheat notes now.
I wonder, given the nature of psych exams, I wonder what it found and whether or not they say, oh, yeah, he's got problems. He's good for us. So we've got a couple of things coming up, a couple of serious things today. We're going to talk about the perfect storm. Defunding the police, mandatory COVID vaccines, and the politicization.
That's a tough word, but I figure you're the English professor. Is it even a word?
I should. It is.
How about cops thinking they're politicians?
How about politicizing? Politicizing public safety.
All right.
I should really read this stuff first. But anyway, we're going to talk about that in a second. But we got a couple of stories. This one's gross. This one is really gross. It's from the Associated Press, October 16th. And from Pennsylvania, a woman raped by a stranger on a commuter train in suburban Philadelphia with other riders on the train. And police are saying they should have done something. It's horrible. It's fascinating and horrible. And it's that bystander story. And it seems like one of these stories rolls around every 10 years or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's just the dynamic of Philadelphia. Meaning, I don't know that part of Philadelphia, but Philadelphia, I don't know if you've ever been there, Dave, but I've been there a few times, and it's just kind of it's not a safe type city. I didn't feel safe when I was there. I was always looking over my shoulder. So I don't have that feeling of safety and like I'm welcomed in Philadelphia. So I don't know if that was the case. The train was just filled with a bunch of knuckleheads from Philly and they just wouldn't help anyway. Or were they were just afraid to help? Maybe the individual who was Fiston Nagoy, maybe he was just such a intimidating figure that they were afraid to help.
Anyway, this happened around, I guess they say that they were called at around 10 o'clock. So let's say it happened probably between 8:30 and 10 o'clock at night, where a woman got raped on a train in front of witnesses, and nobody did anything.
I think it went on for around 40 minutes. No, it's not that they didn't even help. They didn't help, but they videotaped it as though it's this is fun to watch, or let's put it up on YouTube, see how many likes I can get, or TikTok. It's highly disturbing, but as a law enforcement officer it goes right to my heart where that's why you need cops. Because if there was a cop on that train, or if there was a ex or current member of the military on that train, I can guarantee you that they would have stepped in.
Yeah.
They might have gone to a physical confrontation with this guy, and they might have lost, but they would have at least made an attempt to save the person or to help the person.
You know, isn't there some sort of a psychological concept that says that if the more people that are around, if there are more than one witness around, there's less.
Yeah, the more helpers. I think we talked about that either last week or the week before. Yeah. The more potential helpers, the less likely that anyone helps, because everyone looks to the other guy or the other girl and say, why don't you help? Well, why don't you help? I'm not going to help. Why don't you help? Right. When there's one person there, that one person, as long as they physically can help, they usually will help. That one person or two people there. And
this is so what should be strength in numbers, which should be bravery in numbers.
Oh, you could have rolled up on that guy if there's 5 or 6 people on that, and they just cornered him and took him down. Just like they do with the little the wildebeest, the lions or the hyenas will take down a lion. 10 of them will take down something that's 3 or 4 times their size.
This one's a little lighter. I'm going to move on to the next one.
Well, just to throw it out there, I think they're probably, you can probably make the assumption that they're Joe Biden supporters because they're kind of wimpy.
Oh, man.
I shouldn't have gone there.
You shouldn't have. Why make it about politics? So never mind. Anyway, we'll go off that one. Into this, and I'm not sure where you get this one from, but Washington Post, there it is. This is a weird one. A woman from Alabama was found dead in a parked police van on October 7th. Now, listen to the timeline. She was reported missing on October 2. Surveillance footage showed her getting into the van on September 25th. So there's a chance, according to this, that she got into the van on September 25th. She was reported missing 7 days later.
Yep.
And 5 days later, she was found in that van.
Yeah, I don't know the dynamics of, say, that police department and how often. I think the police department, they said that they don't use the van often at all. But I know most police departments, or even the one that I just retired from, we have a whole bunch of cameras. And part of your duties, if you're working on dispatch, is to monitor the cameras in the parking lot and to monitor the cameras within the city, because a lot of cities and towns have cameras throughout the city in the schools. So that's part of your responsibility. So I don't know, maybe the guy took a little nap. Maybe there was only one guy in there or one person in there, and they just missed the lady going into the van. But usually, even with cruisers in our back lots, we have officers assigned to cruisers. Mm-hmm. And they'll usually just go in there on a daily basis and just check them, because people have gone into cruisers and they've slept in the back of a cruiser.
Yeah. You would think it'd be nice and comfortable.
Yeah, it would be, as long as you're not being arrested, as long as you can come and go as you please.
Yeah.
So there's something more to that story. It's either that the cops, kind of fell asleep and they weren't monitoring their cameras.
Yeah.
But then again, obviously this lady, what was her situation? Was she homeless? Was she some drug issues? Was she living out in the street? And that's kind of common that the family doesn't see her for weeks at a time. I'm not sure of the whole dynamic there, but as in the past, I think the police are going to have some liability in that type of situation, because they probably should check their cruises, daily or at least on a weekly type basis and see what's going on. But I can tell you, we had a call probably, 8 or 9 years ago in the North Shore of Massachusetts. It was actually a Dunkin' Donuts employee. And that's really where you get a lot of information. People that know neighborhoods and they know areas. Mm-hmm. And this Dunkin' Donuts employee called the station and said, hey, I've been working here for the last week. And every morning I've been going out to take out the trash. And there's been this car parked in the parking lot of the building next door, a Stop and Shop. It hasn't moved.
Uh-huh.
There's dust on the windows.
Yeah.
It was a blackened out type of car. The windows were tinted. So the person walked over to the car and tried to look in, really couldn't see that good, but the call came in as though there's been a car in a parking lot for over a week. an employee from Dunkin' Donuts looked into the window and thought they saw someone in the back seat. Well, cops show up. A couple of guys from the department showed up. They broke the window, and there was a lady deceased in the back seat. She'd been missing for a week.
And do you remember the car? What?
I think I believe it was a drug overdose.
Okay. Which would make sense because.
But it's a big parking lot. It's a stop and shop. There's 100 cars there on a daily basis, and it just happened to be an employee of a Dunkin' Donuts who saw the car there every day, and it didn't move at all.
Yeah. Which is how common is that? I mean, do you notice these things, right?
Yeah, you notice cars that don't move. How common is someone dying in the car? That's probably in 32 years, it's probably the third time I heard something like that. Someone passed away in a car and 3 or 4 or 5 days went by and then the body was found. Okay. It's not that common. It would be more common in the wintertime. This was in the summer. Because if I'm a homeless person, I need somewhere to sleep, they might go into a car overnight.
Yeah. And
things like that. But no, this was just, it's not common, but it's kind of disturbing sometimes because no one noticed it.
Yeah, it's kind of a Eleanor Rigby death. Lone, somebody dies alone. In this case, obviously, maybe a drug case or whatever. Just leaving cars alone and I'm a comedian, as you know, and one of the things that we do if we've got a gig somewhere that's an overnight gig, 2 or 3 of us might meet in a parking lot, leave cars, and take one car up. And so we usually try and pick up a place that's going to be where the car will be safe. So we go to maybe a hotel off the highway or maybe a shopping center. At least for me, I always try to think about where I'm going to leave my car.
Absolutely.
And now if I'm, the cop was going to see that is going to be the cop working at night, all right, like late at night.
Yeah, because once the store is closed and all the cars are gone, now you can see, well, why are these 2 cars there? But it's hard. I mean, there are cops that work certain parts of the city, and some are more in tune with the environment, and they notice things like that. They might notice, that car hasn't left. Obviously, a police officer didn't notice that. It was a Dunkin' Donuts employee. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, there's really no right or wrong for that. Right. There's really no way of telling who's going to notice it.
Unless you've got somebody who really cares about that parking lot and that property, like a landlord or an overzealous, well, let's say a zealous landlord or a zealous manager of the property maybe might notice it. A passerby might notice it. I think if a cop is driving by this stop and shop parking lot and he sees that car is there, he might make a note of it. But I would think a certain number of days would go by before it would be a big concern for
him. Yeah. It's not like 1 or 2 days. It's usually 3 or 4 or 5 days that you might notice something like that and act on it.
Now, this case in Alabama, I mean, reading this story, they say that there was movement, a little bit of conflicting information. But one of the things they say is that the footage shows movement in the van between September 25th and September 28th. So there's a video that shows movement of the van. Here's my theory on this. Maybe somebody was supposed to watch it. Maybe somebody didn't do that. Maybe they didn't pay that much attention to it. I mean, who knows what kind of an area they were in. Maybe they were in an area where things just didn't happen and nothing was a big deal.
Small little hick town, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe somebody crawled in or maybe it was a busy town, and either way, they just weren't paying attention to this parking lot. This woman crawled in. She wound up dying. And I think they said there were no signs of trauma or foul play.
I mean, it could have been they just obviously exposure. If you're inside a car, the heat of the car. I mean, malnutrition, some sort of a drug issue or something like that. Yeah, there's a lot of ways for someone to die in regards to that scenario right there. I'm sure whatever the autopsy says.
You ever sleep in a car?
Absolutely.
Okay, in your own car?
Yeah, police cruiser for 32 years. I've absolutely sleep in the minivan. Yeah, it's not comfortable, but I mean, people do it all the time. I mean, people sleep in their cars. A lot of homeless people might sleep in their car. I mean, you've been divorced 7 or 8 times. How many times have you been kicked out of the house sleeping in the car?
Never slept in my car under that circumstance.
Oh, okay.
All right, enough of this. Let's see. What do we look at? Oh, The Perfect Storm. Defund the Police. Your favorite topic.
That's the whole title of today's podcast.
Why